Hello, and welcome to Presenting, a podcast where we chat about various topics related to role playing games, typically Paizo products such as Pathfinder and Starfinder, but also others. I'm John Godick, and with me today is Nicolas Logue. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, John, for having me on. A pleasure to be here, buddy. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for scheduling. You're way over there in Hawaii, and so there's a
Yep,
time difference and all that. So this is
absolutely. Yeah,
glad
thank
we
you
could
for
find
making it
something
an easy time.
that worked out here. So
Worked
So
out great.
Nicholas has written over 50 game setting, adventures, and supplements for Paizo, Wizards of the Coast, Cobalt Press, and several other gaming companies. Nicholas is most notorious for such classic adventure modules as Crown of the Cobalt King and Hook Mountain Massacre, set in Pathfinder's Galorian campaign setting, and his extensive work for Keith Baker's Eberron campaign setting for Dungeons and Dragons. Nicholas founded the Iron Dungeon Master Tournament at Gen Con in 2004 and is widely regarded as one of the finest game masters in the world who combines his acting, stage combat, and improv skills to tremendous effect for his players and viewing audience. And little kind of foreshadowing of you might get a chance to see some of that up close here next week. Uh, when he's
Absolutely.
not ad- when he's not adventuring in Dungeons Deep and Caverns Old, Nicholas Logue is the founder and education coordinator of Hawaii's Conservatory of Performing Arts at Windward Community College. He holds the rank of associate professor of theater and currently serves as the chair of the humanities department. Nicholas is also a senior instructor and recognized fight director with Dueling Arts International, who teaches and choreographs combat for productions across the globe. You can reach Nicholas by email at logue@hawaii.edu. Well, first of all, I'm going to say, Nicholas, you are probably one of the most interesting people I've had the chance to interview here, and I've done about 100 people in the industry. So that's saying a lot.
I had very indulgent parents. I wanted to do exciting, adventurous things, and they were like, "Go ahead, I guess. That's fine." So I
No,
got
I
to do
mean,
a lot of wild stuff.
yeah, it's like kind of across the board. You're like living every nerd's dream, all from, the writing and the gaming and then actual doing it, like
Yep.
I get to do cosplay for money and teach other people how to do it. So,
Exactly. I used to have a card that says, "Have sword, will travel," if that makes sense.
oh, nice. Very
I did
nice.
make a
Very
living
nice.
for a few years, like, as a vagabond fight choreographer. I just traveled around with a blade and taught people
Yeah.
how to use them on stage, right? So that's kind of every adventurer's dream, really, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been lucky in life, and I'm real grateful for all the luck, and I've had a lot of great mentors along the way that have given me opportunities to explore exciting things like stage combat choreography, acting, training other
Mhm.
actors as an educator. So, I feel real fortunate to have those opportunities and to share them with the wider gaming world, which is my real bliss, is bringing all that to bear at the table and, making sure we all have a great time together, making myths around the gaming table.
No, that's super. I got to tell you, I like running games as a game master and dungeon master, but
Yeah.
I don't have much for acting chops. I was in the chorus for Camelot and a couple other
Oh,
things,
yeah.
and that's about it. Yeah.
Oh, great.
So I get to play with wooden swords and wear fake chainmail, and
Yeah.
that's yeah,
Then you're doing it, right? Like, that's exactly what it is. That's what we wanna do. Wear some
yeah,
fake
yeah,
chainmail and swing some wooden
yeah,
swords. That's a
yeah,
great evening.
yeah. So Nicholas, you've been really active in the tabletop RPG space for like over a decade.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you got started in that
Yeah.
aspect of your career?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was living in Beijing, China for a while. I was a
Oh,
Fulbright scholar out there. And so I
mhm,
was training in Chinese Jingju, which is like traditional Chinese theater. Some people call it Peking opera or Beijing opera, but that's not a really good translation of what it is.
yeah,
And while I was there was a spring festival. Chinese New Year happened, and I had like a month off. I was producing a couple plays, and I was acting in some Jingjus and touring the country. But I had like a month and a half off for spring festival, and my mom had sent me a care package with a bunch of Dragon and Dungeon magazines that I'd had delivered, to my
wow,
parents' address, and I
nice.
had nothing to do for like a month. Like everything was closed.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know, it was like a treasure trove, right? Because I
yeah,
grew up with the magazines,
yeah,
and, Dungeon and Dragon magazine were a huge part of, like from the age of 8 on, I collected those magazines and played
mhm,
with my friends every afternoon and every weekend. But as, like, a designer, I got the Dungeon and Dragon magazines my mom sent, and I saw the submission guidelines in the back, and I thought, man, I got nothing to do for like a month and a half, so I wrote 3 adventures and submitted them to Dungeon Magazine, and all 3 of them got published, which was crazy, right? Like I submitted 3, all 3 were published. I was paid for the work, and I thought, man, that was really fun. And so I that was my last year in China when I submitted those adventures, and I
Mhm.
was going to graduate school in Hawaii right afterwards. And so I had started a pretty great relationship with James Jacobs, who was
Oh,
the
wow. Yeah.
he's my first mentor in the industry.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful to work with him. He's still one of my very favorite people to even to
Mhm.
game with, but also just to like think about games with and design with. And he really took me under his wing. I'm really grateful for it. And I submitted dozens and dozens and dozens of things, and pretty much from like the year 2002 or three, I think, through about like 2008, I was probably the most prolific freelancer working for Dungeon Magazine. Like at any given year, you could pick a mag, and I probably had an adventure in it, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
they published a lot of my work at that time, and I think it was because I was just writing wildly different stuff. Like I was coming from a career storyteller background, someone who was an actor and a playwright, and at that time a director. I don't do much directing anymore, and so I was bringing sort of robust stories to the fore, and bringing my love of the game and melding it with those stories, making it these magical fantasy tales that were like high drama. You know, like they had a lot
Mhm.
of punch, and they had storytelling moments that were pretty hefty in them. And so yeah, it was great. So I did a bunch of work for the magazines for years. Really, the golden age of my life as a game designer. I
Mhm.
missed those magazines so much. And then I have the email. I framed it. I got an email from I think it was Eric Mona, who was
Mhm.
passing me up to Wizards of the Coast as a recommended freelancer. And then I
Wow.
ended up writing a bunch of stuff for the Eberron campaign setting.
Mhm.
I did Eyes of the Lich Queen, Voyage of the Golden Dragon. I worked on City of Stormreach with Keith and a bunch of other
Wow.
freelancers, and did a few other books and a few other adventures. I had a trilogy of adventures in Dungeon Magazine that, amongst the hardcore Eberron fans, is considered like one of the best sort of trilogy of adventures ever. The first one was called Chimes at Midnight. The second was called Quoth the Raven, and the third was
Mhm.
called Hell's Heart. And they were all about the same NPC, the bad guy, sort of like the villain of all 3 adventures was this Sherlock Holmesian character who had lost his mind and freed all of the villains he had put away, and like led them now as like this
Mhm.
horrible gang that was like doing terrible things. Like his mind had completely broken, and he had become this like this horrible sort of mirror image version of himself. It was like a Sherlock Holmes meets Jekyll and Hyde. And like I
Mhm.
took all the themes from both, from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's work and Jekyll and Hyde, and mashed them together. People love those adventures. I still actually get messages from Eberron fans who are like, "Man, I love Chimes at Midnight. That's a great. I've run it like 6 times and stuff." So that's kind of how I got my start. And then when Paizo went its own direction with Galarian and such, I was on like a super secret message board with like 8 other freelancers. We were the 8, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, like the 8 sort of masked freelancers who actually helped with all of their early products. So I wrote their first adventure set in Galarian, Crown of the Kobold King, right? That was the
Mhm.
first one they ever set
Right.
in their own campaign world. So I helped build all of the setting around Crown of the Kobold King. The town of Falcon's Hollow was my town that I created, and Dark Moon Vale was the area that I created, and other freelancers contributed to in exciting ways afterwards. But Crown of the Kobold King was my first real branch out in Galarian and things, which was just re-released. I think last month or
Mhm.
the month before,
Right. Yeah,
in like
yeah.
a really nice deluxe leather bound set and stuff, which I have, which I'm real happy about. So yeah,
Cool.
and that was me. And then I got a job in England running a
Mhm.
very aggressive theater course, and I vanished from the scene, actually with some ignominy in that sense. Like I started my own small publishing company before I got that job, thinking I was going to invest in the publishing company, and then I got offered my dream job. And so it sucked me to England, and it was like an 80-hour a week job. It was intense, and
Mhm.
so my company failed miserably, my little publishing company. And I was sort of a dark horse of the industry for several years at that time. And then wonderfully and beautifully, because that's the kind of people Paizo are, they stepped in and like helped me get the seminal project for that company back on the rails with the help of Frog God Games, Bill Webb, and that whole
Mhm.
crew. And then that was great because we finally got to deliver that product to all of these wonderful people who wanted it, and it sort of got me back on the scene a little bit. There was one particular human being who's a lovely guy named Lou Agresta who really helped me pick up the pieces of that project in cahoots with
Mm.
Frog God Games. And I'll always like I had a lot of love for him anyways. He's a dear friend, and he now runs the Dungeon Master tournaments and things at all the
Mhm.
major conventions. And he was really intrinsic in helping me get that back on the rails and things. But I disappeared from the scene for a while after that until Paizo brought me back, and then I did Lords of Rust. That adventure path. I wrote the first one. Um, sorry, Lords of Rust is the name of the module. The entire arc was called Iron Gods, right? So the Iron
Mhm.
Gods adventure
Right.
path. The first installment was Lords of Rust, which I wrote. And then I also did a big module for them called Feast of Dust. I was about rhyming my titles, I guess, at that point in time. So Feast of Dust and Lords of
Yeah,
Rust. And then I got
yeah.
pretty busy with my current job, so I haven't done much in the last few years. I've contributed here and there to like there's a game called Fragged Empires. That's a
Mm,
sci-fi
mhm.
game that I've done a lot of writing for. But really, mostly, I'm just head down. I've founded the first ever conservatory, the first ever professional actor training program in the islands of Hawaii, and that's really been my focus for like the last 8 years or so. So that's now like stable, or at least it's beginning. And so I'm excited to do more gaming and get back on the scene. And this event, the Red Raven, that you're helping me with and interviewing me about here, is a big coming out party for Nick Logue, about to do some exciting new stuff in the industry, if that makes sense. And in
Yeah.
kind of the best way, which is just doing what I do best, which is running a game. I bring everything I know to bear on creating a great experience around the table. Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about how you got to become this, world-renowned thespian and
Oh,
fight director? I mean, that's something
yeah.
that I think a lot of people would think, "Hey, I'm a theater geek. I wanna be more macho and do
Yeah.
all the fight stuff too." How do you get
Yeah.
into that kind of thing?
Oh, wonderful. So yeah, I mean, like, my theater background's really interesting. My first theater training. I tell everybody this, John, and I want every gamer geek and nerd listening to this, just like me, right, to hear these words. My first actor training was playing Dungeons and Dragons for like
Mm,
20 hours a week from the
mhm,
age of
mhm.
8 until like the age of 16, if that makes sense, right? I played
Yeah,
so much D&D and Shadowrun and
yeah,
Marvel superheroes, all the old
mm,
classics, Rifts and like the Palladium
yeah,
universe. There really wasn't a
mhm,
game I didn't play growing up in like the 80s and the early 90s. And I didn't really realize that like you could get paid to do that. Like you could be an actor and like you could
mhm,
pretend to be other people, and on stage and on screen, and actually like that was like a real career, right? I was like just a young kid who loved my games. And so when I was I think I was 13 or 14 years old, my grandmother was staying with us at our house. She was getting some treatment for cancer at the time at Roswell Park. It's a big cancer treatment center up in Buffalo, New York. I grew up in Buffalo, and she was staying with us, and I was a weird little kid, and I would walk home from school every day, and I would watch the exact same movie every day after school, which was Legend with Tom Cruise and Mia
yeah,
Sara, right?
yeah.
And my poor grandmother was subjected to this movie like 4 days in a row, I think. And then finally on the 5th day, I came home and I like reached for the VHS to put it in the VCR, and she said, "No." She said, "Please, like just you can do anything you want, but you can't watch that movie. I can't sit here while you watch that movie again. You've watched it every day." And I was like, "Okay, grandma." And I don't remember this, but apparently I went in the corner of the room and I acted out the entire movie for myself. Like I did all the voices. I got most of the lines right, apparently.
Yeah,
Like everything, I just acted all the characters in the movie. And my
mhm,
parents got home that night and my grandma said,
mhm.
"You got to get him in an acting class. He's a lunatic. You got you
Nice.
got to channel this towards
Yeah,
some sort of
yeah,
positive construction." And so,
yeah,
yeah, there was a great Equity Theater, a union theater venue in downtown Buffalo at that time called Studio Arena Theater. And they had a great theater school attached to it, and that place changed my life. My folks put me in like an after school program there, And I went there and I trained as like a young actor. And sure enough, I booked a bunch of commercials and small gigs and roles, and then eventually was cast in their season in a couple of equity shows and earned my union card as a stage actor. And that was it. I was off and running with an acting career for a few years there as a young man. I'd acted off Broadway in New York for a while, did a bunch of shows in Buffalo at the various venues, did a bunch of touring shows in the tri-state area,
Hmm.
and that got me started. And then what happened was interesting was some of the shows I was in, John. This is how we get to fight and fight stuff and stage
Yeah.
combat choreography. I was a big martial artist growing up. I loved kung fu, and I had done a bunch of kung fu from an early age. It was a big part of my life. I deeply enjoyed it, and so I was in a couple of shows where they had fights. One of the most seminal ones, I was in an early production of Romeo and Juliet when I think I was like 17 or 18. I was a young guy, and I remember this. The actor they had playing Samson, who's one of the characters in the beginning that has that fight scene, like, do you bite your thumb at me, sir?
Hmm.
I do bite my thumb, sir, right? Like that whole scene erupts into a big fight usually in most productions of that show, right? And so the actor playing Samson was bless. He was a wonderful actor, but he couldn't move well. And so he
Hmm.
was like a dangerous sword fighter, and he was like almost hurting himself and others in the sword fighting. And so the fight director at the time asked us, the rest of the cast. I was just a background actor. I was a union actor, but just sort of like a background Capulet or something. And
Hmm.
he asked us if anyone had any combat training, and none of us did. And he asked if anyone had any martial arts training, and I said, yeah, I've been doing kung fu since I was 8 years old. And he said, "Great, you're Samson now, right?" And I got huge promotion on the show.
Yeah.
Suddenly I went from kind of getting paid, I think it was like 600 or 700 a week because it was a
Yeah.
union gig, suddenly to
Hmm.
getting paid like 12 or 1300 a week, something around there. I don't really remember. But then I did great with the fight stuff, and then he had to pick a fight captain, John, someone who, when he left, would look after the fights for the rest of the run of the production. And so
Hmm.
he picked me. And suddenly I went from making 12, 1300 a week to making almost $2,000 a week as like a 17-year-old kid. Like, I don't think I make
Wow.
that now, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think that was one of the
Yeah.
best paid periods of my life.
Yeah.
And so something, I wasn't a smart kid, but something clicked like, oh, okay, like I should do more of this. Like,
Yeah.
this is a skill that's in demand sometimes, and it may help you get a better paid role on a gig. And so I did a lot more martial arts. And then I was very lucky years later to find my perfect mentor for stage combat, a wonderful man named Gregory Hoffman, who is the founder and master instructor of an organization called Dueling Arts International.
Hmm.
And they are one of the coolest organizations I've ever been a part of. They basically just hold these workshops all over the world, and they train actors to make sure that the actors know their way around fisticuffs, rapier fighting, broadsword fighting, rapier and dagger, small sword, quarterstaff, rapier cloak, you name it, sword and shield, everything, right? And they certify people to do this. They recognize them as safe and dramatic fighters that you could put in your shows.
Hmm.
Um, and I started off just training as a fighter with Gregory Hoffman and his organization. And now, many, many years later, I'm a senior instructor and fight director for them, right? So I had a whole pathway of working with them. And that took me all over the world as a educator, as someone who trained people to do this, but also as a fight director, right? I went all over the world to direct fights for stage plays. And it was a great thing to do. Still one of my favorite things to do for money. I have a full-time job now as a professor and the education coordinator of this new conservatory that I founded with some other folks. But every chance I get to slip away for a few weeks, especially in the summers when I'm not on the
Right.
docket here, right?
Yeah.
That's the great thing about being faculty.
Yeah.
I'll slip away and I'll choreograph a production in South Korea or in New Orleans or in New York or somewhere where someone I know needs a fight director. I'll come and do my work. And man, it's great to just travel around with swords and teach people how to fight. That's one of the most fun things I get to do. Yeah,
Wow. And you must have a collection of swords too, training swords and maybe real swords too?
not even one.
No.
I don't own a single sword. And you know why? So I'm like a closet Buddhist. So I'll share this with
Okay.
everybody. I don't think many
All
people don't
right.
know this about me. I
Yeah.
really don't own much, right?
Yeah.
So I have purchased probably $100,000 worth of swords in my time, but I've always purchased them for the institutions I'm teaching at, and they keep
Oh,
them.
okay. Right.
So, like, I actually don't personally own a single sword.
Wow.
I don't even have one. But of course, we have a robust armory here at the
Yeah.
conservatory.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not as robust as I'd like. We're just starting out. In fact, the fundraiser we're doing that you and I will talk about soon, one of the things we'll be fundraising for is to purchase more and better blades for the students to use. And
Right.
depending on what level you back that fundraiser, you might get to name one of those swords, yeah, for all time.
Well, now
And we'll
we gotta jump into that right now. So
that's
so
exciting, right?
next week, April 2nd, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
There
April 2nd,
is
Sunday, April 2nd.
a live streaming of an adventure to benefit the Hawaii Conservatory of Performing Arts
That's
at
it.
Windward Community College. Can you tell us more about both the conservatory, what you're raising
Yeah.
money for, and then this kinda cool live streaming thing that you're doing?
Absolutely. So the conservatory is great, right? So I've spent a lot of time on this island, first as a graduate student, and I met my wife in grad school here on
Mm,
the island. She's a local girl, and she's just a fabulous director.
mhm,
And when I met her, she was had already been directing for a while on the island, but hadn't had the robust career she's had since then of directing in New York and London, and like she's a well known stage director now. But at that time, it was mind blowing to me because I had been all over the world as an actor and I had
mhm.
never met a director as good as her. And there
Wow.
was no infrastructure on the island. That's
Mm,
why I married her, right? I slept my way to the
yeah,
top of the of that's what we learned in the acting industry, right? She was the best
yeah,
director on the island, so
yeah,
I tried to work with
yeah.
her as much as possible, and we fell in love doing shows together, which was really fun. But I was blown away because everywhere else I'd ever been, including like Buffalo, a little Rust Belt
Mhm,
town where I grew up, there were equity theater houses and there were training schools connected to them that you could go and you could get trained. And if you were good and you worked hard, you had a shot at getting roles or opportunities with those equity venues. And then, bam, you had your union card and you were like, you knew some people and you could like move to New York or LA or Chicago or Seattle or any kind of nice theater town and you could
mhm,
start working as a professional. That
mhm.
doesn't exist here, John. It never has. It is this place is heavily colonized, as you probably know from
Right,
growing up here,
right.
right? And colonialism is very, very close in the rearview mirror. So when I was looking at taking this job at Windward Community College to run their theater program, my wife and I were living in London at the time, and she was
Mm,
directing in London. And she was like, "Please, I don't wanna go back to the islands. There's no opportunities to do any of the work we do there at all." And I said, "We'll build those opportunities, not just for you and me. In fact, not even for you and me. We have a career. We're gonna build
mhm,
them for future use, for people who should have the opportunity to do this and have
mhm,
never,
mhm.
ever, ever had access to the infrastructure you need to have access to in order to get the training you need but also the opportunities you need, right? And the networking to
Right.
take your work further than just a hobby or like, hey, I'm a really good community actor, but I don't have any idea how to get an agent or get in front of a
Mhm,
casting director or really start my career because it just doesn't exist here for me, right? So that was my mission in life when we moved back here. We moved back here 12 years ago, and I knew it would take about 10 years to do it, right? Because to build an institution from the ground up is nigh impossible, especially in like a state-funded university system, right? The
right.
gears of academia grind slowly, as we say, right? So
Well,
I knew it would
especially
take.
in Hawaii, right? Because they've been really tight for their budgets at their, state universities for a while.
Yes, they have, and the pandemic has exacerbated that drastically.
Mm,
So that put us back.
mhm.
We were actually going to be launching in 2020, hilariously, with the
Oh,
conservatory,
wow.
but
Yeah, yeah.
instead we weren't able to launch until 2022 because the pandemic put things on hold. But
Right,
man, it's
right.
going great. Like within the first year of us launching the
Mhm.
conservatory, we were recognized by the Kennedy Center with their highest award in theater education, the Kennedy Center Gold Medallion, which we
Wow,
just received last month in February
wow.
at their big regional festival in Las Vegas. They invited our production, Demigods Anonymous, an original production written by one
Mhm.
of our alumni, Noah Halela. And we took that production. We took 18 students to Las Vegas. I managed to, just by the skin of my teeth, raise the money to do it.
Yeah.
And those kids had the experience of a lifetime and they won this massive award. And that goes on their
Wow.
resumes. And they met all
Yeah.
these people and all these connections there. And that's the kind of work we do, but it's wildly expensive work because there's no
Mhm.
institutional funding to support any of it, especially in this post pandemic budget tightening, belt tightening environment. So
Right.
I swore a long time ago, John, that I would never, ever, ever dungeon master for cash, that it was something I loved too much. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah, yeah,
something that
yeah,
I
yeah,
loved too much to
yeah,
ever do it, like,
yeah,
on camera for money. I've run big
yeah,
celebrity events for free at PaizoCon and Gen Con and things like that, where there's, like,
yeah.
hundreds of people watching, but I've never ever once that I'll do this like, for myself. But man, to raise money for this conservatory and our amazing students, I would do anything. I would sell a limb to help these kids. They're such
Mm.
great kids and they work so hard, and we want them to have these opportunities. So, welcome to the Red Raven. The Red Raven is born. Yeah. So the Red Raven is a Nick Logue joint, an original Nick Logue adventure, of which there hasn't been one in years. And I've spent a lot of
Mhm.
time master crafting this now, that we're going to run with an incredible cavalcade of celebrity guest players. We're talking about super exciting people like Earl Kim, who played Norio in Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
the incredibly popular game that came out a couple years ago, from Sony, for PlayStation, right? PlayStation exclusive, literally the best game I've ever played, and he played one of the chief roles in it. And of course, he's been on tons of television shows and in films as well, and he's done a lot of voice acting on top of that. He's got a killer resume. He's like a real working professional in Los Angeles, and he loves tabletop. He's been playing tabletop since he was a kid, and I'm just lucky enough to know him. I met him through some mutual friends because he also is a dueling arts fighter, if that makes
Ah,
sense.
right.
And
Yeah, yeah.
so he said, "Yeah, man, I'd love to come out and play some games with you and raise some money for your conservatory and for kids." And then, man, I've got this wonderful guy, Brent Mukai. And if you've watched any anime in English, you've heard his voice. Like, he's one of the most popular voiceover actors for anime. And
Mhm.
also, like, he's been in tons of video games like Ratchet and Clank. Yeah, I mean, like,
Mhm.
tons and tons of stuff. He's got a killer resume as well. And so he's coming out to play with us. We also have a local improv comedy genius named Jose Ver, who's a super well-known local actor. He's on all the local TV shows we film out here, like Magnum PI, NCIS, those shows.
Mhm.
But he's also got a huge following in the theater community here as an improv artist. He's playing, and one of my dearest friends, Christina Ueno, who's helping me produce the whole event. She's also an incredible artist from these islands, like Jose and Brent. So Earl's awesome. He's coming to pitch in. He's not from here, but he was like, "I want to be a part of this. I've got a killer resume, and I do a lot of work. Let me come in and play with you all." So we've got a great team, and the coolest thing about it is they're playing with our students. So it's going to be
Mhm.
them playing with three of our students for this adventure. And so, what a great opportunity for our kids to play with these celebrity guests, and for our
Yeah.
celebrities to get to mentor these young upcoming adventurers. And that's all tied into the theme of the game. So, the theme of the game, it takes place in this, dark, grim, dark, sort of ancient city called Rookspire. And Rookspire is like a city with shadows and cobwebs, and it was ruled by devils for years and years. And even after it was liberated, are you ever really free from the taint of the infernal, right? Once they've conquered your
Mhm.
city, right? And so, there's all these problems in the city of Rookspire, and they have a masked vigilante, very sort of Batman meets Zorro esque NPC, who's known as the Red Raven. And as
Mm.
far back as anyone can remember, there's been a Red Raven in the city. He probably passes the mantle, the
Right,
mask
right,
and
right.
cowl and gauntlet on, right, to other generations. But he's vanished. And now the city is tearing itself apart. And so these young heroes, played by our students, are rising up to try to do something, right? As the city is being ripped to pieces. I may have played a lot of Gotham Knights, as I was like conceiving of this adventure, right?
Yeah,
But they can't do it alone. They're low level. Like, there's like fifth level
yeah,
PCs, like, against a
yeah,
city full of, like, evil masterminds and madmen and women, right? And like
yeah.
devils and darkness, right? And so, they're coming out to do the best they can, and a whole bunch of the Red Raven's former adventuring companions, who have been like out of the picture for decades, are like, have heard the Red Raven is missing, and they're like reappearing in the streets of Rookspire to try to find him, find out what happened to him. And so these ancient sort of veterans who are well past their prime but are like 13th, 14th level experience,
Yeah.
heroes, join forces with these fifth level, up and coming, rising vigilantes, and they are the ones who are going to be trying to make a difference in Rookspire, while you watch from the comfort of your home with whatever snacks you want. And the best thing about it is you can donate to affect the action, right? So you can donate from home,
Oh, yeah,
and you
yeah.
can like affect how the story goes. There's two factions you can pick to join when you donate with us, and they're at odds in the city. One is the Cabal of the Crimson Flame, which is really interesting because the city was ruled by devils for decades, John.
Mhm.
There are all these tiefling now who live in the city, like a large
Right.
population. To put it nicely, the devils interbred freely with the populace is a nice
Mhm.
way to put it, while they were masters of Rookspire. And so there are all these tieflings, and the tieflings, of course, are horribly persecuted by the rest of the city
Mhm.
because they share the visage and the heritage of
Right.
the former devil masters. Though, of course, these tieflings' alignment has nothing to do with their ancestry, right? Like, many of them are
Mhm.
good people, and it doesn't matter, though, because they're spit upon by the others who fought to free themselves from the infernal overlords. And so there's now an organization called the Cabal of the Crimson Flame, mostly tiefling, but they have other members, and they are trying to fight for the rights of these downtrodden people, right? The people who are basically indentured servants to these big elvish and human and dwarven noble houses that rule the city.
Mhm.
And they're like anarchists or freedom fighters, right? Or terrorists is what they're called by their opponents, right?
Right.
Who are trying
Right.
to upset the status quo and like free all the workers who are dying in the foundries, in these hazardous conditions of work, and like fight for the poor, like feral street kids who have no family, who are basically just beaten to death by the rooks. The rooks are like the local constabulary, but they're bought
Mhm.
and paid for by the noble houses in Rookspire. They're not really like
Mhm.
are what we think of police officers as upholding a duty. They just do whatever the noble houses tell them to do. And so this cabal of the Crimson Flame has risen to fight evil in the city. But of course, it's a complicated organization. There's bad people in it too. They more represent chaos than anything else, right? They're trying to upend the status quo. Then you've got the Cerulean Circle, and they are like the lawful. We must work within the institutions and repair them from
Mhm.
within if we are to fight evil. We cannot tear down the city. That has happened in the past of Rookspire, and the innocent have suffered even more than the malefactors when we have done so, kind of thing. So you watching at home get to pick which side you're on. Are you this lawful, sort of aristocratic Cerulean Circle member who wants to fight evil but has to do it within the confines of the institutions? Or are you like, let's tear it and burn it all down, member of the Cabal of the Crimson Flame? Either way, you get to donate. And what's kind of fun is the Cabal of the Crimson Flame donates to our scholarship fund. That's like the youth are going to take over kind of like theme, if
Right.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. We're going to give the money to the kids, and then they can take it from here. And then the Cerulean Circle, you're donating to our conservatory fund, and that pays for us to bring in guest artists, to take the kids to festivals, to stage productions. It pays for a lot of things the institutions can't pay for
Right.
in Hawaii. So you literally are like joining the institution of the University of Hawaii from within and helping provide things that the institution should really provide but can't because of so many deep budget cuts related to tourism and the
Right.
pandemic for us. Yeah, it's a rough time in the islands for our institution. So you get to pick one, and then you can donate, and bam, exciting things happen. Yeah, you can give characters advantage on rolls. You can provide healing potions, magical effects. If you donate high enough wishes, but also there's cool rewards related to our conservatory. Like if you donate at the Blade Master level, we're buying new broadswords and rapiers, right, to
Yeah.
enhance our armory. And one of the rewards for that, there's many rewards for every level. They're exciting. One of the rewards is you get to name one of our new blades, christen it with whatever name you like, and we'll engrave it on that blade. And then every time we pull it out to train with it or put it in a production, we'll think of you and the name that you put upon it, if that makes sense.
That's I if I did that, I'd have to go visit to see it and get a picture with it too, though.
Oh, we'll send pictures for sure, but you should come out and
Yeah.
hold it for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, yeah,
make a
yeah.
trip out, hold your blade. Yeah, so it's pretty
Yeah,
exciting
no.
stuff. Yeah.
That's cool. So,
It's really fun.
where is this production gonna be shown? How do people find it?
Yeah. So it's going to stream on Twitch and YouTube. And the easiest
Okay.
way to find it is to head to our crowdfunding page because we're posting the links up there tomorrow for how to get to the stream. And you don't have
Okay.
to donate to
Right.
watch the
Right.
stream. You
Right,
can
right,
just
right.
watch the stream by going to the page and clicking it there. But we sure hope that if you enjoy what you're seeing, that you'll think about throwing
Yeah.
some gold, some GP or SP at us, or even CP. We'll take it all, right? We'll take the
Yeah.
copper piece, whatever. Every little bit helps. And then that helps us make sure that if we get enough gifts with this, and it's a participation campaign, not a money goal campaign. So we're really
Right.
interested in having a lot of people pitch in, even if it's just for a tiny amount of money, right? We just want
Right.
people to be a part of what we do. And if we have enough participation, I will make this a regular thing. So we'll do this every couple of weeks. We'll add another installment of
Wow.
This adventure is called the Red Raven, but the
Yeah.
the overarching sort of idea is called mysterious benefactors. Yeah, you serve as these
Mm.
mysterious benefactors as part of these secret societies, helping out these
Mhm.
heroes.
Mhm.
And so if we get enough participation, I'll keep this rolling and bring in more celebrities, and we'll play like every 2 weeks or every month during school hours. Like over the summers, I'm often traveling for work and it'll be
Yeah.
harder to do. But like from next fall on, if we get enough participation starting in the fall, we'll do a whole season of mysterious benefactors. And people who donate will get behind the scenes peeks at what we're up to.
Yeah.
Not to mention, if you donate at the shadowy ally level or higher, you get access to a new website we're setting up that's kind of like a Cobalt Press's old, very exciting open design,
Mm.
where you
Okay.
get access to like all the material from the adventure that I'm running. So if you
Mhm.
like what Rookspire, you think it's a really interesting setting, or you just thought the adventure was really, really, really exciting and you want to run it for your friends at home, I'm going to be posting all the information you need to do that on this website. And some of it will be public, but if you post at the shadowy, or if you donate at the shadowy ally level or higher, you get to log in and you get access to much more chunky information, if that makes sense. And you get to influence that information for further installments. So if you want to be a part of the design process, you can.
So
Yeah.
where specifically should people go then?
Yeah, they should go to the crowdfunding page, and I will read out the URL for you right now. How's that sound?
Okay. All right.
So
And I
the
will post it when
URL.
I post these as well.
Oh, hey, that's so great. So the URL for the crowdfunding campaign is Hui, right? So Hui means group in Hawaiian, right? And so it's hui.uhfoundation.org/G/ Red Raven, right? And
Okay.
red and raven are capitalized. I don't know if it's cap sensitive or not. I'll try out in a second and find out. So that's where you head, and we can post that link up here. That's fantastic. And from
Mhm.
there, you can pick your faction and donate ahead of time if you're interested. And then on top of that, we'll be posting the links for the Twitch and the YouTube either tomorrow or Wednesday, so that anyone can just go take a look, if that makes sense, John, and kind of follow along the action. If you happen to be a local and you're watching John's wonderful or listening to John's wonderful podcast, the cool thing is from 9 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time, John, it's streaming and it will continue to stream through the end of the event. But at 1 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, we have a live audience coming. Yeah, so people have
Oh,
bought
wow.
tickets to
Yeah, yeah.
attend. So we're still streaming, but we'll have a live audience there as well to watch the action firsthand. And we'll have a reception afterwards for people who buy the $100 tickets or higher. It's like a gala event, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And then they get to meet the celebrities, maybe play a game with them. Yeah, because we have some private games running that they'll jump in on. And if you're a
Mhm.
$100 ticket or higher backer, you can join those private games and play with Earl Kim and me and Brent Mukai and other exciting folks like Jose Ver and Tina Ueno and our students. By the way, some of our students playing are already like movie stars, right? Like one of our
Mhm.
students playing is Student Featherin, and he just did a movie opposite Jason Scott Lee called The Wind and the
Wow.
Reckoning. It's an incredible movie, right? And we have another student who's playing, he's an alumni of ours named Brandon DePaula, and he graduated top of his class from East 15 Acting School's very competitive stage combat and acting program. So we have our students are amazing, but let me be clear, they're just not as established as these most
Right.
wonderful celebrities who are coming in and donating their time to do this work with them, which we're so psyched about. Yeah. So you get
No,
to be a
this
part of
is
it. You can pick your faction and you can donate. And we even have a match going on right now, which is really
mm,
cool. So we have a $5,000 match happening, and we just started it today. And anyone who donates before the 5,000 is used up to match it, you have your reward doubled as well. So your donation goes twice as far, right? You double the impact on our students. But on top of that, if you back it for $50, we'll give you the $100 reward, meaning that's the Shadowy Ally Open Design
oh,
reward.
right, right. So you have bigger impact if you donate sooner.
Boom. If you donate now, we're
Yeah,
trying to get
yeah,
early donations, right? So that way,
yeah,
like we
yeah,
know
yeah.
we have like some good momentum going into the day of the
Mhm.
event. So we've got a match going on right now. I think we've burned up about 1,500 of it at present, like right now when I'm talking to you. But there's still $3,500 left on the match. And if you throw in $50 to become a boon companion, which that's the every level, $25 is a familiar,
Yeah,
$50 is a boon companion, $100 is a shadowy ally, right? And it
yeah,
goes up from there. 200 is an alchemist, 500 is an enchanter, and 750 is Blades Master. I backed a Blades Master, but I
yeah,
might take advantage of the match because
yeah.
Blades Master is $750. So if I throw in another 500, that gets me to 1250, 1,250. And with my friend Tony's match, he's our founding donor, right? With his
Mhm.
match, I get to go 2,500 level, which is Archmage Ascendant. And
Mm.
all I want to be is an Archmage Ascendant, if that makes sense, John. So I think I'm going to redonate to my own fundraiser to make
Yeah.
use of the match as well, because it's exciting, the rewards at that level. So yeah, anyone should come check out that site, that hui.uhfoundation.org/r/capital R red, capital R Raven. And then you can go ahead and pick a faction, donate, and if you donate soon, you're going to get matched by Tony's money, and you get extra exciting rewards, and your donation goes twice as far for our students. So thank you for thinking about
Awesome.
doing that. Yeah.
And the actual streaming is gonna start what time on Sunday?
So the stream goes live 9 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time.
Okay,
So
which is noon in Seattle and 3 PM in New York.
indeed, yeah. So and that's why we decided to start so early. We decided to start nice and early, and then that way, all of our friends on the continent, and also we have a lot of friends and fans and former students in England. Me and my wife Tari, and a lot of them
Mhm.
have donated and want to watch the stream. So we're making sure that they can watch it in the evening,
Right, so
not
that's
too
8
late.
PM Greenwich Mean Time then, so
Indeed. Yeah, so they
great,
can catch
yeah.
it at 8 p.m., watch it for a few hours before they have to hit the hay if they need to hit the hay, right? So that's kind of why we decided those hours. And so 9 a.m. it starts. We stream until noon. We take a break at noon so that the celebrities can have lunch and our players can have lunch. And then we're back on at 1 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. And that's when we have the live audience joining us at Poliku Theater here on our beautiful Windward Community College campus, right in the shadow of the Ko'olau Range. When the characters in Tolkien sing of, far o'er the misty mountains
Yeah,
cold, right? Like I think about that every time. They're not cold, of course, because we're in Hawaii, but boy, are they
yeah.
misty, right? We're on the windward side, the rainy side. And I often have breakfast right out back of our beautiful theater, and there are these giant Ko'olau mountain range, and they're shrouded in mist. And I can't help but think of everything we love and do as nerd gamers when I have my breakfast out there every morning, John.
No, this is awesome, I
Yeah.
actually can't wait till we're done, doing this because I wanna go check out the check out the campaign,
Yeah,
um,
come check it out,
so
man, for sure.
that'll be a lot of fun. We're gonna finish the interview here. So,
Yeah, you can throw in a platinum piece and get some cool rewards. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Thank
no,
you for
no,
doing that, John. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
this
Really
sounds
good
like a
cause.
lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
a couple questions I always ask people is, what advice do you have people interested in getting into game design? But I also ask if they're interested in getting into stage acting or stage combat.
Yeah, of course, right? Yeah, so I'll tackle them one by one. How's that sound? I'm going to
Okay.
go in reverse order if that's okay. So I'll start with acting and stage combat, and then head towards game design after, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, I think the best thing you can do is get great training, right?
Hmm, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that's something that's really embedded and ingrained in artists in Europe. We worked in England for 4 years at a one of the top conservatories in the UK, East 15 Acting School. Both my wife and I worked there for 4 years before we came back to the islands 12 years ago. And they take the training very seriously there. And that's why when you watch a lot of our big blockbuster movies, the biggest names are all Brits or Australians, right?
Hmm,
Or something. It's
mhm,
because that's where they get the hardcore training to really bring roles to life. And I would say that our industry in America is a bit different, right? It's very like image
mhm,
focused, and like if you have a good look, you might get some opportunities. But we always tell our students, and it's true, you might get an opportunity early on because you're a very attractive human who looks really interesting on screen. But if you suck, like if you haven't trained and you're not a very like skillful performer, you haven't bothered to really work yourself hard to understand how you get out of yourself and create something truly interesting and innovative on camera or on stage, you won't have many opportunities, right? You might get a couple of opportunities early on, but you'll crap out pretty quick because if you get a chunky role, you just won't be able to stand up to it. You'll look like a
mhm.
fool, right? In that scenario. So I would say find the best academies, conservatories, and university or community college programs that offer really exciting training, and make sure that training is practical. and make sure that it's not theory based, but you're actually working by doing and things. And also be sure that the people offering you that training have done the work themselves.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, in academia, right, we have lovely teachers who know a lot, they're scholars, but they may have never acted on stage, but they end up teaching
Mm.
acting classes because like that's what's on the schedule and they're assigned to
Right.
it. And that's hugely problematic in my mind. It's something that you would never see happen at a conservatory where the point is
Mhm.
practical training, but it does happen in a lot of programs. So get to know your teacher's pedigree. That's a big thing that I always recommend. Like, do they actually work, or did they used to work and now they're educators? And what level did they work, and what can they pass on to you as far as professionalism and actual craft and the use of that craft in real productions, right? So that's one of the most important tips and pieces of advice I can give you. You got to do the work. Find out as quickly as you can if like the university program or conservatory program or academy program you're applying to uses their current students in their productions, because many don't. Yeah,
Mm.
many programs like just bring in their friends or community actors or pros or alumni because they want their shows to look really polished. While that's
Mhm.
great, right? That's not the point of those shows. It's educational theater. The point of the show is that the students learn by doing. So we're really proud. We cast our current students in every production we do here, right? And we do a couple of conservatory productions per year where we cast mainly alumni, but even then we still cast current students, and we do at least two shows that are almost 100% current students. Even if we bring in alumni for those shows, we give them smaller roles. It's more about having them as a good influence on the
Mhm.
cast, if that makes sense, right? Not them taking the major roles away from our students, but them being there in the wings and the smaller parts to uplift everybody is the only way we use our non-current students in our main student production. So find that out. Find out if the program you're thinking about going to even cares or does that, and don't base it on their reputation alone. Find out the actual nitty grit of what they offer and how they offer it, right? And if they don't, they can't give you specific answers about whether they cast current students in their shows. If it's audition based and the auditions are open to anybody, don't go there. Does that make sense? Because if the auditions are open to any community member, you're going to be competing with every great actor in that city for the roles
Right.
that you're paying to produce. Does that make sense? Your tuition's paying
Mhm.
for that show, but you're gonna have
Mhm.
to compete
Mhm.
with all the actors in the city for a role in it, and that's not right in my mind and not fair. It doesn't happen at conservatory, right? At conservatory, you're paying for the privilege of doing that work, and so you should get to do that work. So that's a big one for me. Man, for stage combat, I cannot recommend more heartily Dueling Arts International. They've been a huge part of my life and have gotten me to the place where I know that when I'm in a room, everyone's safe and I can make the fights look awesome. And that's because of years of training with them. And the guy who runs the organization, Maestro Gregory Hoffman, is one of the most lovely human beings I've ever met. He's a real sort of sage mentor who cares deeply about every single student in the room and has infinite patience even when he's under the time constraints of professional grade work, right? He seems to
Mhm.
somehow
Mhm.
get it all done and taught and properly, set, but without ever having to make it feel like it's under that pressure. He's just a really lovely human being and an absolute master. He can watch a piece of choreography once that's like 30 moves long, and then afterwards over lunch, he'll say, there's a mistake on move 16 in phrase 3 of that choreography that's messing up the rest of the fight for you. And you're like, what? Like you just
Wow.
watched that once. Like he's
Yeah.
really like he's done this his whole life and he's a true master of it. So yeah, if you have they have workshops all over the country. I would just Google Dueling Arts International and take a look at their website, find a workshop near you and sign up. They have a bunch this summer all over. I think there's one in Colorado. There's one in Missouri. I think there's others as well. I can't remember where they are. I have to catch up with my involvement with them over the summer. I think I'm teaching at one of them, so I better find out where they are, so,
Yeah.
so I know where I'm going. But yeah, I can't recommend them enough. You should really, really go and train with Gregory Hoffman and his entire cadre of amazing teachers. He very carefully selects his teachers and trains them very carefully to be lovely people who are wonderful at what they do. And the president of that organization, Joanne Mendelson, is a lovely human being and a fabulous teacher as well. And she usually teaches at many of the workshops as well. She's come out and worked with us in Hawaii and did a great job for our students too. So, yeah, find great people and make sure that they're going to give you real experiences, practical experiences, is my best advice for you. And don't hope you'll figure it out. Don't rely on your looks or something to get you ahead. Make sure you're ready for the opportunities as they arrive by doing the training. if that makes sense. So yeah, that's my advice for that. And I think it applies in a similar fashion, John, to game design stuff. I was really lucky. Like, I don't know how I trained to be a game designer, except for the fact that I got to work with James Jacobs on my
Yeah.
very first projects. Like, I think he took over as editor of Dungeon Magazine right after my first adventure was published. So I submitted them to the editor before him, and I'm blanking on who that is. I want to say it was Chris Thomason, but I'm not 100% sure that's true. I'd have to like look back at the issues to tell you. But I submitted 3 adventures. Two were published right away. The first one was great. It was just a little short adventure called Cry Wolf, and to this
Mm.
day, it's a wonderful first level introductory adventure that's good for the whole family. Right, like it's literally just about this wolf that people think are preying on this town, but the wolf is just the animal companion of a nice ranger who's been trapped by some poachers and
Uh,
is like in danger of being killed, and so
yeah.
the wolf's doing its best to get help. It's like a Lassie go get help
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
scenario, but it's this big giant animal companion wolf, and so people are terrified of it, right? And so it's a fun little, you investigate a little bit, you kind of find out people don't really know what this wolf is. They're saying it's a vicious thing, but it hasn't actually attacked anybody except to like nip at them and try to pull them into the woods, you know what I
Right.
mean, to get help. And so then you end up confronting the poachers and saving the ranger at the end, and like making a mentor friend of like a third level ranger who owes you one, and like a
Mhm.
friend for life from his wolf, if that makes sense, for
Yeah.
saving his friend and master, if that makes sense. So that got published right away. But and one other did too. I'm blanking on what it was, but it was a shorter adventure as well. But there was a huge adventure I wrote that I think when the editor ahead of James left, ended up back in the slush pile.
Mhm.
Maybe never to be seen again, right? Just buried in the slush pile. And I had kind of like gone, maybe I'll keep doing this. If I hear from them, I'll put together some proposals. And then sure enough, I moved to Hawaii for grad school, and I got an email out of the blue from James Jacobs. And it was like, hey man, we found the Winding Way, this amazing adventure about this monk in this monastery, like up in the mountains, and that has invented his own style of battle and stuff, and he's teaching his disciples. And it's a horror adventure. Like horrible things happen to this monk that like turn the whole monastery into like a nightmare scape, basically. And so you end up there through whatever adventure hooks are included in that adventure. And you like not only have to face him and all of his disciples who have become these terrifying things, but he actually awaits you at the end of his final test for his master students, which is like a series of traps that are very
Mm.
much like to test a master monk, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, but as a like test your skills as a master monk before you can even reach him to battle him, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And James loved that adventure, and he said, "Man, this is great." And he said, can you make some changes? Like we actually don't. We have way too many low level submissions. I think it was like a fifth level adventure, a sixth level adventure, John." And he said, "Can you make this like a 15th level adventure?" And I went,
Wow.
"Oh." I
That's a
was like,
lot
"That's
of
a big."
scaling.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, "That's a big rewrite," especially for one that's, like, based in one location, right? Because like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
of high level adventures as, like, you're casting teleport, like, you're spanning the realm by that point, right? Like, whenever I run
Mhm.
high level, it doesn't take place in one place. Like,
Right.
scene 1 is, like, on some windswept cliffs, overlooking, an ocean full of, like, merfolk, right? And then, like, scene 2 is in the heart of a volcano because, like, that's, you're dealing with the ability to bend time and space to your adventurer's will at that point. So you
Right.
better rise to that occasion as a game master and
Yeah.
give them
Wow. Yeah.
opportunities to do it, right? And so I said, "Oh yeah, that's a really challenging rewrite, but a fun challenge." And what
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lovely guy. So I rewrote the whole thing. I had to start from scratch, but I had the location still, but I had to expand on them and do lots of different stuff. I rewrote the
Mhm.
whole thing. And here's a great lesson for those game designers starting at home, John. Do we have some time? I'm not using up all your time, am I?
No, no, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, I rewrote the whole thing on like a crappy computer I had at the time.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I wrote it up, and the computer died and ate the whole thing. And like the deadline was a few days later. And I was faced with the option of telling James I couldn't complete it, which I didn't even tell him about this, right? Or just sitting down and just rewriting the whole thing in one day from memory, right?
Wow.
And thankfully, I had a similar experience in college, and I had to write this big final paper to graduate as an honors grad, as summa cum laude from my undergrad. and I wrote the paper, and something happened with the computer. Again, this isn't now. We didn't have the cloud and like easily backups and right. Like
Right.
this was in the 90s, early 90s, and my paper went away, and I was like still a young guy, and I was like I can't rewrite this. Like I'm done. I guess I'm just not going to graduate honors. You know what I mean? And my mom was like, "Are you kidding me?" And, like, she, like, took me to task and
Yeah.
made me sit and just rewrite the whole paper in, like, 6 hours, right? And I can't thank her enough. My mom's been one of the biggest influences in my mom and my
Mhm.
dad, big influences in my life, taught me a lot of life lessons, and that was a huge one. She said, "You cannot shirk from your responsibility just because it got hard all of a sudden. You've gotta
Mm.
put your nose back to the grindstone and just redo that work." You know what I mean? And sure enough, I banged that paper out. I graduated with like a 3.9. I got summa cum laude status. That led to all these grants to go to China for free. You know what I mean? I was a Fulbright scholar. I lived in China for free
Mhm.
for years, creating art and theater, like as an ambassador to China, as like a diplomatic, artistic representative to China. Couldn't have done that if my mom hadn't made me do that. And so, sure, it was rough when I lost. It was like a 50,000 word adventure when I lost the
Right.
whole thing, right?
Wow.
It was rough to rewrite it in like a day and a
Yeah.
half, but I did. I just rewrote the whole thing from memory in a day and a half and
Yeah.
submitted it. And I don't think James even knew. I don't think I ever told him. He might find out if he watches or listens to this. Hey, James.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But that was a
Yeah.
big thing. It was an exciting thing. It was fun. And then I was off and running after that. And James was a huge part. I to this day, I just saw him in January. I went to Seattle for work, and I made sure to hang out with him. Actually, sorry, it was December. I made sure to get together with James and Eric Mona and Adam Daigle and a few other of
Mhm.
my friends up there who were a big part of me coming up in the industry. And I ran a game for them at Paizo headquarters. Right, I went to
Nice.
Paizo and I ran a Marvel Superheroes game for them, for, like, 4 hours. That was an
I think
absolute
I heard about that game. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was on
Okay.
they posted it
Yeah.
on Facebook, and so did
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. We were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's a good game." Really, really fun game with a good group. And so and at the end of that night, I took James by the hand with both my hands, and I thanked him for everything he did for me. And he was a big mentor to me, not only as a game designer, as a human being. I learned a lot about being a good person from James Jacobs because he's an infallibly good human. Like, everything comes right from his heart.
Mhm.
And he never has any other agenda. And there were projects I completely like pooped the bed. You know what I mean? Like with and he was in all of those situations, he picked up the slack and helped me and brought me back from the abyss a few times, right? When like I just life
Wow.
stuff was happening and falling apart for me, and like he helped me not only complete the work I had said I was going to do, but also just kind of help that by doing that, and did it in such a loving way that I was able to pull myself out of the fire a couple of times. And I think about that every time one of my students has a colossal mess up. Instead of getting angry at them, or
Mhm.
frustrated with them, I think about the times in my life that I've had things really not go my way, and I just get up down on their level and say, how can we help? How can we help you with this? You're struggling. What can we do to help you? And there's no judgment or punishment at all. We'll figure out this work when we have time to figure out this work. More importantly, I don't want you to feel this way anymore or to be hurt by this. And I got a lot of that from my dad, but I also got a lot of it from James Jacobs. He was a really lovely guy. So pick great mentors. Try to find someone who's up and coming in the industry and doing good work, who seems like a decent human being, and see if you can do some work for them. Like watch the Kickstarters. I always tell people, like, I got some work in recent years just by like, I was on Kickstarter shopping and I
Yeah.
saw a Kickstarter that I liked, Fragged Empire. Great,
Yeah.
great, great, interesting game. Great, great flavor and narrative and fluff, right? And I backed it because I was like, "This game is cool, man. I'm going to back this game." And then on a whim, I just emailed the creator of the game because it was his first Kickstarter. He was just creating the
Yeah.
game, and I said, "Hey, do you need a writer? Because I write, and here's my resume. It's pretty exhaustive. I've done like a
Yeah.
ton of work
Yeah.
for Wizards and Paizo and Cobalt, a bunch of people. And here's my fee. Like, here's what I charge, and like, here's a writing sample. And do you need anything? And he emailed me back immediately, like a day later, and he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I need writers. I've got this Kickstarter's going great, and I got to now write it all." You know what I mean? So, would you
Yeah.
be interested
Yeah.
in doing some setting building for me? I said, "Yeah, that's mostly what I do. Like, I'm known as like the anti-stat block guy. Like, I'm not a
Mhm.
crunch guy really, right? I'm all
Yeah.
like, you can imagine from my background,
Yeah.
I'm all
Yeah.
story and character,
Yeah.
right? Like, I create wonderful PCs and NPCs and wonderful settings because my mind is rich and filled with Shakespeare's genius, and like all of sort of like the greatest plays I've read and things are all in my mind. But yeah, he was like, I need setting material, and I said, man, I can write planets, and I can write organizations, and I can write NPCs till the cows come home for you. And so I did a bunch of writing on his core rulebook, which was really fun. And that was one of the only projects I've spent some time doing in the last several years because I've been so busy with the conservatory. So
Right. Right.
that's my advice. Find great people and apprentice them and know that you're an apprentice. Like you don't need to be great at this at the start. Does that make sense? Like I
Yeah.
definitely wasn't. When I was writing for James Jacobs, I would send some really stellar pitches his way that he was like, this is cool. We want this. And I would send stuff that I thought was awesome. I was like, isn't this awesome? And he was like, no, this is awful. Like it's like we are not interested in this. Please don't send
Oh,
anything like this to us again.
wow.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, like, and that's totally cool. Like, they're in the place they're in the industry for very good reasons, right? Like, they have been doing this for decades, and they know more about it than we'll ever know. And that's great and wonderful. And you should embrace that as an up and coming designer, not think I can do better or I've got better ideas. Like everyone has ideas, but how do you bring those ideas to life in a way that hundreds of thousands of people get to enjoy them? And they know that. Eric Mona knows that. So does James Jacobs. Jason Bowman, another wonderful human being, right? Who like he's taught me so much about life and fun and all sorts of things and how a good game is run. He's a great game master. I mean, I've played some his games are outstanding. And on top of that, man, he can work crunch clearly, right? Like he understands the mechanics of the game. And that so find those people and mentors, whoever they might be. It doesn't have to be the same as me, right? Find those folks and team up. You know what I mean? Like be willing to be their Robin or Nightwing or like whatever they need. A little caped crusading sidekick, and learn as you go is a great way to do it. So yeah, and now it's a whole new world, John. There's classes in this now, right? Like I
Hmm.
teach a class
Hmm.
in game design at my college. It's one of the most popular classes. We refills every time I run it. I don't get to run it that often because I'm department chair, but I'm running
Yeah.
it in the fall, and it will absolutely fill to the brim.
Oh
Right? People
man,
love that.
that just kind of reminds me that I
Yeah,
should offer up something like that.
you should, John.
I
Yeah, because
think
you're a professor.
yeah, and
Yeah,
the
you
thing
can
is, I
totally do
my
it.
department wouldn't do
Yeah.
that, but they don't offer anything like that at our university at all, and I
Mhm.
think they'd be interested in doing something like that.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
just kind of a
started
thought.
off doing it well, to help you out, what I did was I started off doing it as an interdisciplinary studies class.
Yeah,
And
right,
then,
right.
independently of me, a creative media program was built, and they were
Mm,
like, "Can we please would you mind taking your game design class into our creative media program?
mm,
We want it to
mhm.
be a creative media course because we hear great things about this class." And I was like, "Hey, I'm not a video game designer, right? Like I'm a tabletop guy, right?" And they were like, "Yeah, no, but it's not that different. The coding is what makes it different, right? Like
Right, right, right.
there's a lot of the same
The narrative
concepts."
building and structure and everything, it's the same thing,
Correct,
yeah,
right? So they were like,
yeah,
"We still want it in our creative media degree," and I said, "Yeah, sure,
right.
I'd love to offer it through there." So we did that, and then yeah, and so that class is great, and there's classes like that all over the country now. Like some really
Mhm,
wonderful,
mhm.
like some super high level people offer them, who are much more active in the industry now than I am. Right? I'm just
Yeah.
making a comeback. Right? Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. Yeah, I'm
We
literally
never
just kind of
left. Yeah,
making a
yeah.
comeback only because I really am desperate. I desperately want to help raise some funds for our conservatory.
Yes.
We've got a great program. We're winning the gold medallion from the Kennedy Center. Our shows are getting invited all over the country, and we want to be able to keep affording to offer those opportunities to our students. And so I'm very happy to put the gloves back on and get in the ring and like show people what I can do. And I'll throw the challenge down. You think you're a better game master than me? Watch this feed, watch the Red Raven. And I don't know that you're going to think that anymore. Yeah. Because I run a slick game. I've just never done it for public consumption yet. Yeah. So let's see what happens. Come check it out. I think you'll really enjoy yourself. Everybody who's watching this or listening to this, check out the game. You'll have a blast. You can ask. I've run games for everybody in the industry. They'll tell you it's a serious experience. Yeah. Nice.
Well, Nicholas, this sounds really awesome. You are by far one of the most interesting people I've had the
Oh,
opportunity
well,
to
that's
talk
nice of
to,
you to
and
say,
this
John.
sounds like an awesome, awesome live streaming show that's gonna be, worth the
Yeah.
watch, and, I, for one, will, make sure I get a chance to take a look at it, and I
Thank
recommend
you.
other folks, do so as well, and
Yeah.
just as a reminder, I will, go ahead and, I'll post a link to to your crowdfunding source,
Yeah.
site, and I'll do that both on the podcast and on the
Thank
YouTube
you.
channel for folks so they can
Oh,
click right through that.
thank you.
And of course, we'll talk it up on social media as well.
Oh, thank you, John. You guys are the best. Thank you. Thank you, No Direction. Thank you for the whole network. Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Ryan's a dear friend and a wonderful guy. And you guys just do awesome stuff. I finally joined up on your Patreon. That was long overdue. I finally
Yeah.
backed it at the highest level so I can just keep enjoying your
Nice.
content and making
Nice.
sure
Well,
that
thank you for
content keeps
that.
getting made. No, no, I should have done it years ago. I just like I'm so glad I finally did it because it's you guys do wonderful things and it's a real pleasure. I got to watch a bunch of these to prepare for this interview, and I really enjoyed them. So thank you for that. It was great to watch them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Nicholas, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, and I look forward
my pleasure.
to chatting with you in the future, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, here's hoping I'm back with more exciting news at some point soon.